Rudy Farias gave his first interview and cleared the air on a lot of things. It answered some of my questions and then left me with some other ones. And we're going to talk about the highlights of it in today's video. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa with Mr. Roscoe back there. And my name is Paul. Today, like I said in the intro, we are going to be talking, continuing our talk on the Rudy Farias case. Now, he gave an interview, and like I said in the intro, it answered some questions, it cleared the air, but it also left me with a lot of questions. And more than that, it pulled at my heartstrings to hear the pain in this young man's voice describing the story, and then some of the stuff that he was saying, I mean, it had me concerned, I'm not gonna lie. So what I want to do in today's video is I want to look at some of the clips, I want to use those as talking points and go over them. Now, this is not the interview in its entirety, but it's out there. I'll put it down in the description below if you do want to watch that without me interrupting and saying my little piece or whatever. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk very quickly, for those who do not know the case, about what's going on and how we've arrived at this video. So like I said, for those who don't know the case, Rudy Farias was missing for 8 years. He recently appeared on the doorstep of a church. A Good Samaritan called in, was like, hey, what's up? And instead of this being like a great, happy, oh my God, he's been found type occasion, it literally lifted the veil on a bizarre case where we have learned that yes, he did go missing allegedly 8 years ago, but he came back the next day, and his mother never told anyone differently and continued the guise of he's missing and began her grift. But also she began the stint for him being essentially a prisoner under her control. So that's literally like the time store version of what's going on with the case. You'll learn more about it as we go through the video. And so this is my second video. You'll see towards the end where the little up next or whatever, it'll be the first video I did on this. So let's go ahead and watch that first clip.
Are you shocked with how much attention this is
getting? Yeah, a lot. It's a lot of attention. It kind of gets me overwhelmed, you know.
Okay, now I know that was a very fast clip right there, but I wanted to just put that up there to kind of recreate the surprise, the bewilderment that I had literally in the first few seconds of this interview. Because hearing his, you know, the things that his mother said, all this type of stuff, you would think that you were going to hear from somebody who was nonverbal, who was not that put together, who didn't seem intelligent. You know what I mean? Like maybe some stuff was going on with them. Literally, when I watched this, like the first few seconds, I was like, what? This is like just any other, you know, young man you would hear talking, right? So that was my first huge shock, was I was like, oh, whoa, like, wow, okay. Let's, you know, what does he have to say? Now, also, you know, when he's talking about the attention, all that, I mean, can you imagine, okay? You've gone 8 years with, and you'll hear the living hell that he's had to live in. From that to all of a sudden, I mean, your story's out there, everyone's talking about it, but it's also through the lens of like this really messed up situation with your one and only parent, and you'll hear his conflicting, you know, feelings about that and whatnot that he has. So I just wanted to put that up to kind of recreate that, like, whoa, okay, he sounds, I don't want to say normal, you know what I mean, because what is normal in any situation? But it was not what I was expecting, okay, at all. Now, also, before we go, and if you're new here, if you're not new here, then you heard this spiel. Y'all, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a reporter, I'm not a cop, I'm not any of those things. I'm not credentialed in any way. So all the stuff I'm doing here is literally just my opinions on this stuff. I'm just a guy with a sofa, a dog, and opinions on true crime. They're just that. I urge you to come to your own conclusions after doing your own research and talk about it down in the comments below. So just know that going into this, and let's go ahead and prep for clip 2.
Where were you? Where have you been?
Just at home. Just stuck at home, you know. If somebody would come over, my mom would just tell me stay in the room, you know. Keep the door locked, don't let them in, don't make any sounds, don't do anything, you know.
I mean, what a way to have to live. And now we'll hear more details of this as the interview progresses and whatnot. One thing also with this to pay attention going forward, listen to his I don't know if it's like tone of voice or how he speaks, you can hear his voice kind of shake and give way, and him holding back extreme emotions during different parts of what he talks about, especially like when he talks of his brother and whatnot. You can tell the closeness with that. And it's just very heartbreaking to me to hear, because you're hearing this pain that this young man has gone through, and it's so extreme and it's so severe, and you're just like, my God, what did he have to go through at the hands of his own mother?
She never like locked me in or, like handcuffed me or anything like that. I had free will to leave. It just felt like brainwashing, honestly. Like, it just kept confusing me, just the way, she would manipulate me into saying, like, oh, you're gonna get arrested because you have a speeding ticket or something, like something minor, something innocent, and then it would just kind of escalate into just people sorry.
You're good.
Which is,
Take your time.
And right there you see the manipulation. Yeah, sure, you can walk on out the door, go ahead, but you're probably going to get arrested because you did A, you did B, you did C, right? Can you imagine? And when it sink in completely, this is one thing I think it's going to take him a while to like work through. But the relief to be able to go outside and not be looking over your shoulder, and especially it's made up, right? This is all fake. This is a world that his mother created. So this whole thing that you'll hear more and more, where that was how she like lassoed him and manipulated him, and was this like, oh my God, you got a speeding ticket or this, the cops are gonna get you, you ran away, whatever it was, and so that level of like, I can breathe, I can exhale, you know what I mean? It must be intoxicating.
Arguing all the time, and then we eventually just went into she locked me in there pretty much mentally, just that she was my only parent. She was the only person I ever really had besides my brother. So when I lost my brother, I didn't have anybody to teach me how to live,
My heart absolutely breaks for him when we hear these moments. Listen to the sadness that comes through when he talks about his brother and losing his brother. And here's my thing, when he's like, I didn't have anyone to teach me or anything like this. So you're left essentially, because remember, his father took his own life. If you're new to this case, his father actually worked for the Houston Police Department. And his father got caught in this like scandal of like doing fake parking or fake tickets and stuff like that to basically get overtime. And he ended up taking his own life. And so then also, the brother-in-law. So, you have this whole thing going on, right? Okay, so that being said, then you hear him talk, and this, to me at least, my interpretation, is this heartbreak that comes through. So you have that loss, you have this whatever, it's like he was lost at sea, and his mother was like, I'm your raft, right? And I'm going to take you to safety. But really, she was leading him over here to this like deserted island that was surrounded by sharks, and the sharks being her.
What had you been doing for those 8 years?
Just trying to study the best I can online, understand how the world works, understand different cultures, different religions, different everything, because my life, I just believe that we should stop putting labels on everything and just understand the communities and the prosperity and the growth and the positivity, because there's just too much fighting, there's too much anger, there's too much depression and mental health problems in the world.
My God, he was literally in a prison created by his mother, using the internet to try and figure life in the world out. And here's the thing, like when I hear stuff like this, and as we get deeper into this, and I'm not sure if I took some of the clips out of him saying this, but I'll go ahead and bring it up now. Some of the stuff that you hear him talking about is like this whole thing he goes into a little bit here of like, labels and this and that and or whatever. And we'll hear him talking about almost like this theory that colors, and I'm not talking about skin color, like the color red, the color white, the color black, the color pink, yellow, whatever. Like stuff you see out in real life, you know what I'm saying? Is like an algorithm, and it sets you on the stuff, and we'll talk about it more in depth later. But overall, I was like, oh wow, okay, this is someone who, to me, it sounds like clearly has just had to use the internet to find any kind of human interaction and learn that way, because all I knew was his mother, right, in the world she presented. Well, we know how the internet is, right? especially like we're out here doing our daily lives, that kind of thing. We're interacting with people and whatnot. But as you see, the internet, it has lots of rabbit holes. And so I was like, oh my God, this poor kid. He has had to, at a very pivotal time in life, like just spend every last waking second on the internet trying to figure himself out, trying to figure life out, trying to figure the situation out probably. And I mean, it can't be healthy, right? Now, another thing too that I was like, remember how Quinnell X, and we'll talk about at the end of this video, just while I'm thinking of it, my feelings on, do I think, what do I think about the whole aspect of what Quinnell had to say after hearing what Rudy said. Not talk about it some, but we'll talk about the end especially. Okay. But, Quinnell was like, oh, she was feeding him like hallucinogenic, stuff like that. I think this could also be something where some of the stuff he'll go into, I'm like, if he was sitting there, like, and allegedly being, like, doing all these kind of hallucinogenics and stuff, and, like, forming, like, theories on life or thought patterns or beliefs, whatever, it could contribute to some of the stuff we're hearing, but also just being in this, coming from the abusive situation that he was trapped in as well. So, that being said, listening to him talk, it's just like, well, yeah, your mother couldn't ever let you live a normal life, because if that happened, she would have been exposed for her and her lies. So she was never going to let him be free.
It felt like Stockholm Syndrome, honestly. Like, just held against my will mentally, not physically, just constantly, like, she was bombarding me with negative thoughts. And, like, every time I come around her, she just makes me... It's like little triggers just pop up, and it's like if I'm trying to get away from my mom, I'll hear a random noise, and it'll be like a little reminder in my head, like, don't do that, don't say this, or, just little things like she's putting ideas or thoughts into my head whenever I'm just trying to, just understand the world.
Imagine the picture of life itself that she presented to him. I mean, you get snapshots of it, and some of the stuff that he'll talk about, which clearly at this point, you can tell he knew, like, this isn't right, that isn't right, I'm questioning it, but because he was subjected to having to live with her or whatever, I mean, what are you going to do when you're trapped with an abuser like this, right? So, imagine, this is what I keep thinking of, amongst other things, imagine the eggshells you would have to walk around that house over basic stuff living with someone like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh my God, I feel for him on that. I'm like, there is no telling what a normal day was like. I mean, basic stuff. Just hear him go on and on about the negativity in this, and I just want to do something normal. Because remember, everything is being done through a lens. And again, this is allegedly, I wasn't there, okay, so I don't know. So, this is just my opinion or whatever, but everything is being done through this lens of she's trying to stay out of trouble. She's got all these plates spinning to keep whatever scheme she's got going, right? Because remember, she's grifting GoFundMe. She's, grifting this, grifting that. I mean, that's her whole thing. It's grift, right? At the expense of her own blood, right? This was so disgusting about it. But, I mean, I just sit here and think, I'm like, oh, yeah, I mean, there's no telling what it was like to live with her. I mean, my God, what would happen if, like, a normal accident took place? Well, clearly we see half the time she's going to blame him, talking about, well, you're going to get arrested now, you have to go into hiding.
Do you think your mom took advantage of you?
Heavily.
How does that feel? I mean, I can't imagine, you said your mom is really the only person in your family you have. How was that you felt your own mom took advantage?
It's like I lived in prison. It's like I lived in a jail my whole life.
And there you go, right from him. It was like I lived in a jail. He does have this self-awareness. And again, that's one of the things that I was like, oh, when I was listening to him speak and stuff, I was like, this is a very intelligent, I mean, it's the thought process that he's put together here on stuff and connect the dots. I'm like, oh yeah, no. She would have you think, like I said earlier, he's nonverbal, this is, this wrong with him, all this kind of stuff. Okay. Pay attention as we go. Because you're going to start hearing some things and things will match up where you're like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, yeah. Because Quinnell was saying these type things or whatever. But you're also going to hear some things later on that don't quite match up, that we're going to question or whatever. And really, it's not that they don't match up, but they don't align. And we'll talk about those more as we get to it. But just have that in the back of your mind as we keep watching these clips, because we're going to get into some of them here real shortly.
I just wanted to live my life. I just wanted to just love somebody, you know, have somebody else that would actually love me, because I wasn't sure what love was.
I mean, my God, it rips your heart out. And again, I'll go back to this. I'll probably say this 100 times in this video. Look at the level of introspection. I wasn't sure if I knew what love was. Like, I wanted someone to love me because I wasn't sure what that was. I mean, what an awful thing to be. I mean, number one, and knowing the context for this is all related to a parent that's done this to their own child, right? You're like, oh my gosh. So I see someone and I hear someone. I shouldn't say I see him because obviously he's blacked out or blocked out with that thing. I see someone who is absolutely been broken down by the one person who was supposed to give them unconditional love, right? Absolutely just broken down to the core of questioning their existence, the humanness of their experience here on this plane by his own mother, right? That's where I'm just like, you know, this poor guy.
Can you go into the brainwashing? What would she say to you? Would she say something would happen if you were to leave her home?
It wasn't that. It's just after I left, I started to understand that all of it's just an algorithm. It's literally all an algorithm. If you look at something black, you understand that they understand. If you look at something white, it'll confuse you when you're trying to go in a positive direction. If you look at something red, it'll remind you of love. If you look at green, it'll remind you of, you know, like grounding people that are there for you and stuff, you know?
Okay, this is what I was talking about earlier with this whole thing about the algorithm and different colors and everything, you know, the thing, whatever. Okay, and this is one thing I'm curious to hear your opinion on all of it, but this is one of the things where I'm like, keep this in mind because I really want to hear in the comment sections what y'all's opinions are on this. And again, I'll say it 100 times, I'm not a shrink or anything like that, so these are just my opinions, and if somebody does work in that field, love to hear from you. Dr. Grande can drop it in the comments. Okay. To me, I'm just like, oh, whoa, like this is, you know, and the level that he'll go down this with later, I'm like, definitely someone who has spent a lot of time online, like, is their social outlet. And he'll say this, I'm not trying to say that in a negative connotation of like putting him down because it was his only thing, right? He was working with all he could, and that was his world to escape through. And, you know, but I'm just like, okay, this is almost like somebody who's like gone down these like really deep rabbit holes, forming core beliefs that are just a little bit like, you know, what's he talking about? But then also this is where I'm like, okay, wait, if it's true that she was giving him hallucinogenics to help him just kind of stay in a gray zone and confused and all that type of stuff, I mean, this to me sounds very trippy, almost like thought patterns you might have going out, you know, and like hallucinating or whatever, and coming up with this like, yes, like the whole world is like an algorithm, you know what I mean? Or found something online, I don't know. But I'd be curious to hear what you all have to say, because at one point in the interview they'll ask, like after he goes on about this, almost like in a very nice way, they present it almost like, you know, do you think basically not having interaction and spending so much time online has, you know, kind of hurt your interactions or how you can connect to people type thing? And he's like, you know, yeah, you know, whatever. I don't think he would probably understand that we're asking him maybe relation to this, because they'll ask a question and he'll go into this, you know, they'll have to ask the same question like kind of multiple times to get to that, because he'll go down this pathway several times. And so I just think it's interesting, but it also is it's hard to listen to, because again, for me, it's just someone who's, and when I say broken, I'm not saying in the context that they can't be fixed or healed, you know, because I think that process has already begun. Listening to somebody who's been broken down by another person, you know, but not broken, if that makes sense, right? I don't know. I'm just trying not to, you know, say that he's broken and like not fixable or whatever. You know, it's not that at all. But I mean, just someone that's like really questioning their core belief, their core existence, you know, because of what they've suffered at the hands of their abuser.
What was she doing exactly that kept you hidden?
It's just every time I would try to leave or, you know, try to do things for myself, like I want to go get my own money, I want to go work a different job, I want to do this and that, they would always just come right back around to just don't do that, or it's bad, don't do that. You know, like, the cops are gonna come out, they're gonna do this, they're gonna arrest you if you're driving the car without a license, or this and that. And it's just like...
So here you can see everything he wanted to do that would relate to him being independent and going off his own. She had a reason why he couldn't do it. The cops will come get you for this, they'll do this, they'll do this. Well, the reality is she couldn't do it. She depended on him. She needed him in this situation for multiple reasons, and I think that grifting is one of them, money. And then some like weird emotional thing, almost like she was looking to him for all this emotional satisfaction, but also exploiting him for financial gain. And that's where I think that he obviously realizes this, you know, and is going to come to terms with this more and more and more, because again, he's just fresh out of this, right? I mean, this is so recent. Now, one thing to pay attention to, because this is what I was talking about when I was like, okay, pay attention to some of the stuff that's going to drop. Okay, so remember how in the interview with the Quinnell Acts, he was like, you know, she takes him to work and he does her job and blah, 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 blah. And you hear him mentioning the job here, right? So just know that, because we're getting ready to talk about it after the next clip, where he starts dropping the stuff that you're connecting the dots is what I'm getting at. Like, okay, well, Quinnell said that he said this and now he's talking about this. So, okay, things are adding up, but also something that a neighbor said, which we'll talk about after the next clip, which we're going to watch now.
Oh, how do you expect me to get a license to drive a car if I can't even go out? All I do is work 12-hour shifts 7 days a week and I get $60. Like, I don't understand how that's fair.
Why do you think she wanted to keep you hidden?
Okay, so you heard that, working 12-hour shifts for $60 for a 12-hour shift. And again, what I think she was doing is taking him to work and like having him do whatever and then breaking him off some of her own money or whatever, right? Because if you figure that out, that's like, what, $5 an hour? I mean, come on, you know. Okay. Remember, if you've watched all this, there was a neighbor who did an interview who was like, yeah, when he would come over, meaning when Rudy would come over and this guy would be like, look, I'm working at some job, I can hook you up, whatever. And Rudy would be like, no, you know, I'm good, I get paid on the table, I make more, like, I'm fine where I'm at. Okay, so two things with that. First of all, when you start seeing that, I'm like, well, he might not know, right, that he's getting ripped off, number one. Number two, this is also what I'm talking about with the eggshells and whatnot, because he would already know, I have to walk on so many eggshells and we have so many rules at my house, my mother would never allow this. Like, it's not even an option. So I'm just going to tell this dude whatever, because I know enough to know that I can't tell him that. If this makes sense. It's like such a peculiar place. He is like forced to participate in his mother's lies and whatnot in that way, because it's what you have to do. It's like survival, right? I mean, he's living with her. This is his parent, is what it is. You don't see a way out of that, especially when you've been brainwashed like this. So it all makes sense to me, where I'm like, oh, okay, wow, yeah, so she's bringing him to work, she's paying him like some of her money or whatever, you know, having him do whatever she was having him do. And of course, you know, he wants to do all this stuff. I'm going to get an offer, but she would never let that happen, right? And you heard him say, I mean, like, you know, the second that he would try and do something, it would be, well, the cops are going to get you for this, or the cops are going to do that. You know, she would have excuse after excuse for him. So imagine sitting in this fishbowl of a prison that his mother created, seeing life go on out there, getting on the internet and seeing stuff, but you can't participate, you can't be a part of it, you're stuck back here with this monster.
Did she ever tell you, did you ever ask, Mom, why are we pretending that I'm missing?
And that's the thing, when it comes to the real small details like that, I just can't, I don't remember. It's like it just blocks it out, like she's blocking it out for me or something. And it's like I just want to remember the facts. I just want to understand, you know, who I am and what I'm trying to do, and just try to live my life the way I want to, not how she wants me to.
Now, to me, this is just normal. When you've lived in this scenario or whatever, you're just not going to question it at a certain point, but also try to keep the peace. Because imagine questioning that to a certain level beyond what you know is acceptable with the rules that have been set out by the person. You know, the probably unspoken rules, but just, you know, subconsciously, this is how this situation with this person in this household, who it is my mother in our home, operates. You know, I can't just point blank ask why blank, because you will hear enough about this where it's like, oh my God, she would make his life even more living hell, right? To punish him or something. You know, or God only knows. So it's like he's having to play this game. He's having to pander to the abuser.
If you had to guess why she was doing this, was she making money from you being missing, as far as you know?
I don't know. I think somebody at one point mentioned something about an original GoFundMe page. And then my mom wanted to say something about, like, one of my aunts or something was, like, stole all the sodas or something. But meanwhile, where's all the money that they raised, you know? Like, and where did that go to helping find me?
Oh yeah, you can tell she was totally grifting. Now, she's been banned from GoFundMe. We've heard from one of the private investigators who was like, yeah, we raised money. She stopped in, she grabbed it, you know, didn't even thank the people who were helping look for him. This was all part of that. Again, I don't know if I've said it in this video so far, but if not, I'll go ahead and say it. This so much reminds me of the Gypsy Rose case. That was I always say this wrong, the Munchausen's by proxy. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, of the young lady who her mother basically kept her, I mean, literally in medical prison. And she found a boyfriend, had him kill the mother, and so on and so forth. A very popular case. But, you know, this reminds me so much of that, but just in a different form, and maybe had not taken shape to that degree quite yet, not with all the medical complications and whatnot. This is like somebody who was clearly making money just off of somebody being missing, that type thing. Now, you can also tell she continues to keep him in the dark about this type of stuff. So he's like, well, there's something about a GoFundMe, and my aunt took all the sodas. You know, some of his answers are so specific where you can tell, like, the confines of the small world that his mother presented him with is what he knows about life, and really all he knows about it.
Originally, I think all that had started because she wanted me to fake taking a bottle of Tylenol or like Aleve PM or something, you know, sleeping pills. And then she wanted to fake me going to the hospital, and she pretty much just forced me to go into the ER and be like, hey, you know, act like you're sick and you're overdosing and
yeah, like I said, total Gypsy Rose vibes, okay? Here's the thing. So imagine, number one, that you're willing to do this, number one, just in general. Number two, it's with your own child. Now, aside from the fact that it's like you're doing this actual thing, like, hey, pretend you did this to them. Look at the example. You're telling this child it's okay to behave like this. It's okay to lie about this. It's okay to scam like this. This is an okay thing. This is coming from your parent. You know, this behavior is all right. That part really gets me when you hear the stuff that he's talking about. Now, this next clip we're getting ready to watch does come with a trigger warning. It does have some self-harm conversation in it, and it's going to answer some of our questions as to why he was found with some of the scars and whatnot on him. So just be warned, if that's upsetting to you and whatnot, just, you know, skip over this next part.
You know, getting sad. I didn't have an idea how to, you know, understand my emotions. It was after my brother passed away. I didn't know how to deal with pain and depression, so I would just literally just rip a Coke can open and just run it on my wrist like a cheese grater just to feel something.
He's lucky to have escaped the situation, his mother alive, or without causing himself serious harm, his mother causing him harm, or all of the above. Because honestly, what he's describing, I mean, it breaks my heart when I hear, yeah, I'd rip a Coke can apart and just do this so that I could feel something. I mean, being that desperate to feel, to know, to experience, to get out of whatever you're in. You know, I can remember being a little kid, and we grew up in the country. I say that because to some people it might not be the country, but to me it was certainly. I mean, grew up in the middle of nowhere, basically. But anyways, I remember this complete awareness of always like looking over at the pines and being completely aware there's a whole other world out there that I was so hungry to get to, right? So I can only imagine what he's describing, where he's literally being like held captive, whether it's mentally, physically, whatever, right? I mean, this is an abusive situation. This just some kid that's like, I wonder what else is out there in the world. I mean, this is like, I want to get out of this situation, and my heart just breaks for him. Now, before we go to the next clip, I got another trigger warning because he talks about some of the SA stuff. Now, this is a huge question that I was like wanting clarity on, and so I'm going to put his response up here and then we'll talk about it. But just know, again, if this is a sensitive topic for you, go ahead and skip over this part too.
Without getting into specifics, I'm sure you've heard or seen what Quanell told the media last week.
About what in particular?
About things that he says that you told him in that hotel room last week.
Specifically...
About some of the sexual things.
See, that's what I'm saying. The twisting. No, I didn't say anything like intercourse or this and that.
But
like,
no, I don't necessarily think he didn't get into specifics like that either. But he did mention that your mom wanted you to play the role of husband in the house.
Yeah, pretty much. It basically felt like that. Like, make sure to cook, or you didn't make me any food. You didn't do this and that. It's just like I just want to provide for myself. I don't want to keep providing for my mom. I just treat it like a roommate towards the end, like I'm tired of being your son. I just want to be your roommate. I just want to live my life. Give me my check instead of $60 for 12-hour shifts 7 days a week at night. Like I just want to live.
She would make you go to work with her, is that?
Yes, ma'am.
And then we don't want to twist your words. We want to say it from your perspective, and we want to make sure we get this right. So I know she had you play the role of a father, but as far as sexual assault or something of that nature, did she ever force? You don't have to go into detail, but
she didn't force herself on me or anything like that. Like it wouldn't be anything like I would have to go get a rape kit or go file a police report. Okay. It would never be anything like that. Just stuff that really made me uncomfortable, and I didn't have any references or other people to bounce off of to understand that, like, if it's a healthy thing that she does or not. Maybe it's just me not understanding how people work because she's the only person I understand, but...
Wow, this part is very hard to listen to. Now, I have no doubt we see this all the time. The media lies, they twist things. We get it. I understand. Okay. And this is so difficult and whatnot to comment on because, I don't want to sit here and I wasn't there. Like, I don't know. I don't know his story, but what it sounds like to me is, and then also, I should say this too. So there's two versions I'm looking at this through. What Quanell said and what he's now saying. Quanell never gave any direct this specific act happened, but Quanell mentioned the kissing. Remember when Quanell was kind of like, I don't want to talk about the kissing, which I thought was kind of odd the way Quanell said that, but nonetheless. And he was like, she made him play daddy, this and the other. We'll get into that in a second. Okay. I feel like probably what is going on here is some boundaries were definitely crossed, because when he was, let's say something, I forget what he said already, but it's just like, why, what did I do? What did I do? Clearly she was doing something that made him uncomfortable, and he was trying to say, and she was making him feel guilty for that. What that is, I don't know. Right? I don't know. Now he's saying, there was not this specific act going on. And okay, sure, probably not. But it just sounds like something took place that was inappropriate. It made him feel uncomfortable. He tried to set a boundary and she guilted him into it. And I'll leave it at that. So regardless, yikes, okay? Yikes. Not only is he living through this very tumultuous, toxic relationship with his mother, you have that vibe going on. And I almost feel like when you look at the statement of, what Quanell said, like she made him play daddy, she made him play husband, it was almost like she was putting that role on him. Now remove any kind of intimate aspect from that role of play daddy, play husband, but almost like you're the man of the house, you have to do A, B, and C, provide, or whatever she was manipulating him throughout the day, like, act as like the guy of the house, whatever, however you want to say it, right? But then there was probably this blurry line when it came to stuff like that of, maybe she was going over the lines of like whatever she was trying to do. I mean, I don't know, and I don't want to even sit here and try and guess, right? Like I said, all we know is what Quinnell said and then what he's saying here. And I imagine for him, for Rudy, he is having to work through some things to be like, oh, wait, I've just come out of this mental, physical, emotional prison that I've been in. I'm questioning everything that has taken place and realizing, oh yeah, you know what? It wasn't me that she was having, me think I was the one for being wrong for doing A, B, or C, or, wanting to have my own life, whatever it is. But it was her, and that's going to take years to sift through, right? And so if there was something inappropriate like that going on, that's a lot to process, and my heart goes out to him, and I truly hope he can find a safe space to be able to go through that, because it gives me goosebumps, right? Because I cannot imagine what that had to have been like to survive through this nightmare with that layer on top of it.
Is there anything that you want people to know about what happened to you?
I wanted to live my life, and just something inside of my brain kept going back to her, like she was my life support in a sense. I needed her, or at least she made me feel that way. She never gave me the confidence or the guidance or the teaching that I needed. She never gave me anything other than just the bare necessities. And
I mean, can you blame him, right? I mean, this is normal, right? He wants to go out there and live. He wants to do his own thing, his own life, right? And clearly that threatens her. Obviously, it goes without saying, and again, I'm not a shrink or anything like that, but the codependency on her part is off the charts. She had so much expectation of him. She relied on him so much for different emotional stuff, whatever it was, and he just wants to go live his own life. And I hope that with all this being unearthed, the veil being lifted off the situation, that he's able to finally do so away from her. Now, also, we've already gotten reports, and I say that just like, scouring the internet, of her having gone to the place that he's staying at, whatnot. She's going to still be trying to control the narrative, because here's the thing. Even if it's like in a scenario where he's like, I don't want to have anything to do with you, I'm over here, I'm in a safe place, yada, yada, yada. She's still going to be nervous about, like, what kind of charges is she looking at, right? She's the one who's done all this wrong stuff, and done this whole next level thing. So she's going to still be trying to keep those claws in him to manipulate the situation, which is ultimately, in my opinion at least, to protect herself.
Without getting into specifics, I'm sure you've heard or seen what Quinnell told the media last week.
About what in particular?
About things that he says that you told him in that hotel room last week.
Specifically
About some of the sexual things.
See, that's what I'm saying. The twisting. No, I didn't say anything like intercourse or this and that.
But
like,
no, I don't necessarily think he didn't get into specifics like that either. But he did mention that your mom wanted you to play the role of husband in the house.
Yeah, pretty much. It basically felt like that. Like, make sure to cook, or, oh, you didn't make me any food, you didn't do this and that. It's just like, I just want to provide for myself. I don't want to keep providing for my mom. I just treat it like a roommate towards the end, Like, I'm tired of being your son. I just want to be your roommate. I just want to live my life. Give me my check instead of $60 for 12-hour shifts 7 days a week at night, Like, I just want to live.
She would make you go to work with her, is that?
Yes, ma'am.
And then we don't want to twist your words. We want to say it from your perspective, and we want to make sure we get this right. So I know she had you play the role of a father, but as far as sexual assault or something of that nature, did she ever force? You don't have to go into detail, but
she didn't force herself on me or anything like that. Like, it wouldn't be anything like I would have to go get a rape kit or go file a police report. Okay. It would never be anything like that. Just stuff that really made me uncomfortable, and I didn't have any references or other people to bounce off of to understand that, like, if it's a healthy thing that she does or not. Maybe it's just me not understanding how people work, because she's the only person I understand, but
Okay, so here he does confirm, yes, he was going to work with her, doing that, getting paid under the table. So, I mean, my question with that is, like, what does your job have to say about this, right? I mean, do we know, has she been fired? Like, has this been looked into? I mean, there's so much stuff that you're just like, how did this go on so many different levels for so long, right? Now, again, when he gets into the conversation with the other reporter goes right in for it, like the SA stuff, right? Which I was like, ooh, you know, my God, I would have been like horrified to ask that directly, right? And he's like, no, it wasn't this. Again, I just rest at the whole thing. You know, it's just inappropriate. You know, he's like, I don't want to care for you. It's like she's putting this unhealthy emotional and all this like burden on him, like he was her man or something. And I'm not saying that in like I mean, it is creepy, but not in like just a, you know, intimate type way. I mean, just all around, like, you know, oh, you didn't make me feel, oh, you didn't do this, oh, you didn't do that. And it's like, no, girl, go out and get on Tinder, right? You know, but there's so much toxic stuff wrapped up here. The grifting, the emotional abuse, the emotional manipulation, all that, right? He's just wanting to go do his thing, but he can't because of the scenario she's put him in, which also she probably doesn't want him to leave, right? She sounds like one of these mothers that's like so insanely mentally unstable, they don't ever want their child to go off, right? They're getting too much emotional attachment out of it, and it's like, girl, they're a grown-up. It's normal and healthy for them to do their own thing, type situation. And you heard him say where he's like, you know, because she's really the only person I ever knew, I didn't know if A, B, or C was normal or appropriate, and I had no one to bounce that off of. And I'm sure he felt trapped in that, and I'm sure he blames himself for a lot of that, right? And that's what's heartbreaking too, because she clearly was able to get in his mind and sway it and warp it and do all this kind of stuff. And so it's unfortunate, you know, he's, I don't want her to go to prison, I don't want this, you know, blah, 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 blah. You know, she is still in his head, and again, it's going to take a while to get her out of there, but at least he's gotten physically away from her, at least at the time of this recording, and hopefully that can remain in that way, because that's what it's going to take to heal, you know. And I'm sure he'll come up with questions along the way, and anger and sadness and frustration and all this type of stuff, as he realizes, wait, A, B, and C wasn't normal. You know, I thought this is completely normal my whole life. Why, what, you know, but whoa, you know, that hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't normal. And it's going to take many, many years. I do believe Quinnell's right, where he needs multiple layers of therapy. You know, I really hope to not see this be a situation where it's just, oh, okay, well, everything's just gone on and he's left to his own devices, because this young man needs lots of help to maneuver his way back out of the dark forest that his mother has trapped him in.
For the longest time, you've stayed hidden. You haven't been able to say who you are. Is it nice? I mean, you can say who you are now. You can be your own self and do your own life.
Yes, sir.
What are you hoping?
Just a job, get my own money, and help out my communities, help out my people, and help out other kids like me. Because I don't want this to happen to other people, because I'm sure it happens to a lot of people.
God bless him. I mean, my gosh, you know, and I hope that for him too. You know, and as we learn more about this story and the more that comes out, it's, again, I've said it 100 times and I'll say 100 more, it's just heartbreaking. You know, he has a long road to go to get completely out of the clear, if you will. I mean, this is a lifetime defining type thing. Doesn't mean that your life has to stop there and that's only your identity or whatever, but it's going to take him a long time to work his way out of this, and I think he definitely has a lot to offer the world. He's a very insightful, intelligent young man, and this is one thing I really took from this, is I was just like, wow, this guy really has developed a lot of these thoughts. Now, like I mentioned earlier, when he gets into some of the stuff talking about like the algorithm and this and that, you know, there's some of it where you can tell, like, yeah, I mean, there's probably a little bit of skewed stuff going on here that's not, he doesn't really know how to express himself, it sounds like at times. Like he might have it in his head, but getting it out to here on some things is like, well, what are you trying to do? But I mean, I don't expect that, right? I mean, my God, he's only had to deal with his mother, you know, and only knows her, just like he said, and he's been trapped like on the internet basically. And then whatever else, we do find out, it's confirmed that she was like feeding him drugs the whole time. I mean, my God, can you imagine staying like a shroom, you know, zoned world world for years on end while dealing with that kind of stuff from your mother. Again, it's why he needs lots of therapy. It's why he does need, people to step up in the community that can be there locally to help him transition into a normal, productive life away from his mother. So let me know what you think down in the comment section below, your opinions on it. We're going to keep following this because it seems like every day, I can't keep up with it, where I'm like, oh my God, he did a review. Oh my God, she did that. So we're going to keep following it because this is very interesting. I want to see him prosper. I want to see him make it because, like he said, there are lots of people out there who are in these situations, and it could be worse than his, less than his, but nonetheless, it's not healthy. So that is it. If you are still watching, drop some sofas for Mr. Roscoe. He's still back there. And that's it. I do appreciate it. Until we gather down in the comment section to continue the conversation, I'll see y'all there.